What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Got some of you guys hanging out in the chat. We are going to jump directly into this slate. We've got 12 games to talk about on DK. We've got 10 games on FanDuel. DraftKings is including the 2 games that are second games of a doubleheader. That's the Padres and Phillies and the Rays and Royals games. So we'll touch on everything, but I've only got about 45 minutes to knock this out. So less now. I got to punch out right around 5 o'clock. Actually, not playing this slate at all today. Just figured I would jump on. Just kind of how my brain works. Larry says, thanks for doing this. No problem, buddy. It's my pleasure. Just kind of like how these things work for me. It's, you know, I know I can do a good DFS show in 2 hours, but I don't know for sure that I can do it in 45 minutes while also under the gun to leave the house in time for a show. So that's just kind of like how my procrastinating brain works. It just needs to kind of cram everything into like tiny little windows of time where I'm just crunched and under the gun. And that's how I do a good job and so on and so forth. So let's get into this one. We've got Trey in the chat. Stephen Leibowitz in the chat. Larry's here. Seth says he's been drinking all day, ready to DFS. I love it. I'm going to start drinking probably a little bit after the show. Had my typical herbal refreshment to start the day along with my coffee. Jumped into the article. We've got a ton of bullet points in the bullet version of the article up on the website. Got the home run picks up there, the power index, the stacks tool, just basically everything that's there. So, everything that's there every day. Won't be able to update it tonight, but hopefully we got most of the lineups correct. Got some confirmed lineups loaded into the model here. So let's fire away. Like I said, going to try and punch out right around 5. Who's betting the over? Who's taking exactly 5 o'clock? It certainly isn't going to go under. But I think we've got a decent one to start off the slate here on both sites. Marlins against the Orioles. I think this is a bit of a four-corner spot. You can see both pitchers project fairly well. We don't have as big a plateau of guys from 25 to 30 fantasy points today, but we've got a few guys well ahead of 30. There's 3 pitchers that project well out ahead of that mark today. I think they're kind of obvious names. And then a bunch of guys that fall into this kind of a range at a variety of prices. So I think you can play either one of these guys. Kyle Gibson has enough quality to get through the Marlins a couple times over here. 6,000 is a value price on DK. 88 is probably pushing it on the FanDuel slate, but he can certainly get there. He projects well enough for me at 29 FanDuel points. 19.3% strikeouts on the year, a 4.40 xFIP, a 4.60 ERA. Doesn't really cough up a ton of home runs in terms of power upside, induces a good amount of swinging strikes. Good, not great pitcher. I think that's proven over time with Kyle Gibson, but we know he can get there on the right night. And it's not like the Marlins are a very good team on the other side. They're decent at limiting strikeouts, but they don't hit for much power outside of Jorge Soler. On the right night, Jesus Sanchez certainly can hit for some power, Brian De La Cruz, but they're not a good power hitting team. They ranked in the 20s. With a below average WRC plus against righties. So I think it's a good enough spot at price for Kyle Gibson. And then I like Braxton Garrett, 8,600, 9,400. He's obviously on a different price tier. He's going to need to find a few more strikeouts than we're projecting him for, or work deep into the ball game. Those kind of go hand in hand, right? If he works 6 innings, I expect that he's going to find a handful of strikeouts along the way. He's a talented strikeout pitcher. 26.7% strikeout rate, doesn't get himself in trouble with just a 4% walk rate. A 3.70 ERA, but a much better 3.01 xFIP. Gives up a little bit of premium contact, 91.2 miles an hour exit velo, 46.3% hard hits, 9.7% barrels. So between short starts and coughing up a few home runs or at least a little bit of premium contact, he can work himself into trouble, and then some of those runs get given up by the bullpen if he comes out in the 5th. Like it gets a little shaky around the foundation with Garrett, but he's got a very nice ceiling in this spot. So I'm buying the ceiling for 86.94. Same time, I think you can definitely roster some Orioles. They get Ryan Mountcastle back, so a big-time right-handed power back coming back to the lineup. 4,300, 3,000. He's cheap for his talent. 11 home runs on the season and 263 opportunities. I like the spot from Mountcastle hitting cleanup. You get the version of the lineup that has Aaron Hicks hitting 5th. You guys know what I think of him. You can take or leave him. He's obviously been good since getting to the Orioles. Overall, 227, 323, 390, 1% better than average creating runs. A little bit of power from both sides of the plate. Cedric Mullins, good lefty hitter, 30-30 upside, 9 home runs, 14 stolen bases on the season, 22% better than average creating runs. Gives up the leadoff spot, gave it up to Gunnar Henderson, who's in the lineup today hitting 8th. Austin Hayes jumps to the leadoff spot today, but Mullins basically gave up the leadoff spot. But I think he's still interesting hitting down lineup. He can maybe focus on a little bit more power upside down there. I like Jordan Westburg, Gunnar Henderson hitting 7th and 8th if you're going to a bunch of Orioles here. I really like Austin Hayes leading off ahead of Rushman, Santander, and Mountcastle, though. If you're rostering one lineup of Orioles, just take those 4 guys off the top. Or you can work in, like, instead of a Santander, maybe you skip him and work in a Hicks or a Mullins for a little bit of differentiation. But 3 of those 4 top hitters should probably be in most stacks. No Ryan O'Hearn tonight. On the Marlins side of things, Arraez and Soler. Arraez gets on base. Soler hits a home run to knock him in. That's the ideal version of their offense. If you don't get that, you've got good guys in Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez bringing up the 3rd and 4th spots. It really takes a dive after that, though. No Garrett Cooper in the lineup today is a major ding for their power upside. You can see all the black dots in the bottom of the lineup there. Just low end projections for those hitters. I do still like Julie Gurriel when he plays. He has a decent hit tool still, 267, 330, 395 on the season. He's not good anymore, but on the right night, if you catch him, if you're building a ton of Marlin stacks, 3,500, 2,700, it's not like there's a big tax on playing Julie Gurriel. Segura, Wendell, Fortes, Myers, totally skippable. I don't really see a reason to build a lot of Marlin stacks. Without Garrett Cooper, I take that down a little bit in my esteem for where I had them before. I don't think they're as playable. It's still a playable spot against Gibson. There's obviously an upside there, but not as strong without Cooper. Just a weak version of that lineup that I didn't really like to start with. Padres and the Phillies. This game's only on the DK slate. Phillies, definitely a major source of upside. A lot of home run potential going up against Ryan Weathers. Weathers called back up from AAA, going right back to AAA, I believe, after making this start. 40 innings, 9 starts, 15.5% strikeouts, a 5.17 xFIP, 6.08 ERA, a 4.02% home run rate. You're not playing Ryan Weathers, not even at 5,100 for value here. FanDuel, guys, just ignore those prices. That's from the all-day slate for FanDuel, just so I could get this game to appear in the model. So Weathers is a non-option that you're throwing Phillies bats at. Kyle Schwarber, massive home run number. I'm pretty sure that's the highest home run number of the day. Larry just noticed it. Yeah, Schwarber home run number. Yeah, I think that's the highest one on the entire slate. Totally justified in this spot. Even lefty doesn't matter. Plus, he'll get some bullpen opportunities here. Like the spot for Kyle Schwarber. Titanic upside for 4,600, 3,400. Don't really care about the 186 batting average. I don't care at all about the 100 WRC plus. You'd like to see that be a little bit higher for a guy that we typically go to in this lineup. Trey Turner coming around in the counting stats, 10 homers, 19 stolen bases. Still not Trey Turner, 81 WRC plus, but there's major ceiling there any given slate. Nick Castellanos at 4,300 has been their best hitter all season long. Still way too cheap. Don't really get it. 300, 342, 491 with a 123 WRC plus, 13 homers. Doesn't make sense that he's only 4,300. You take advantage of the price. Harper's cheap at 54. Hasn't really hit for power. I think there's still some lingering not necessarily pain, but like the elbow's just not fully back yet. We see that with pitchers a lot when they come back from this surgery. It takes a little bit for the power to come back. So I think the home runs will obviously come around eventually, but he's been productive. 113 WRC plus, 5 steals, 290. He's a productive guy. You can certainly play Bryce Harper. He could stand to be a little bit cheaper with the lack of power, but he's fine, especially when you can average him down with Nick Castellanos or with Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, Edmundo Sosa, Brandon Marsh. Depends on what you get second game of a doubleheader, so watch this lineup if you're playing this game. We'll see if we've got it before lock. We should, but it might push back the start. Who knows? Fanatic says, how is he the highest home run number? It's just how it came out. I didn't really have time to look into it, but Schwarber's always typically pretty high. Weathers gives up a decent amount of premium contact, a lot of home runs so far this season. I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be that high. So watch what you get in the Phillies lineup here. Padres lineup on the other side, same story. Second game of a doubleheader. Watch what you get. I think Taijuan Walker may be a little bit more playable here, but I don't really like it. He doesn't project well for me going up against that top-heavy Padres lineup, 9,300, 9,500. If he was 1,000 less expensive, he'd be more interesting. He's the picture of a league average pitcher. That's exactly who he is. 4.02 ERA, a 4.35 xFIP, a 21.4% strikeout rate. Pitching to form. This is who he is every season. And that means, like I always say, a league average pitcher. Fanatic, no worries, man. I know you're not. I know you were just asking. I know you weren't trying to like nitpick or call me out on something. Don't worry about it, dude. T, do you care if teams play doubleheader for bets? I care just in the version of like, it renders the lineups a little bit more unpredictable going into lock if we don't have them. As far as like they've played 18 innings that day, I don't really worry about it. It's baseball's I love baseball, but it's not the most strenuous of sports. It's not like they're skating up and down a hockey rink or running up and down a basketball court for 2 games in the same day. So I'm not that worried about that. It's more the unpredictability of the lineups. What I do think that could provide you here is if you get a funky version of the Padres lineup, let's say like 2 of the stars happen to sit for some reason. It's very unlikely to happen. That would give Taijuan Walker a little bit of a bump, but he's still probably too expensive for his quality here. So I think you're grabbing a ton of Phillies bats against Weathers. I think you can play some Padres bats depending on the form of the lineup. Obviously, all 4 of these guys are in play. Machado and Bogart's still pretty cheap for who they are. Machado's kind of coming around. 261, 309, 465, still not great, but a 204 ISO, 16 homers now, a 111 WRC plus. Kind of crept up on me that he was coming around and rounding into form. 43.4% hard hits. Still Manny Machado. Nothing to worry about there. Bogarts, same story. Still Xander Bogaerts despite a dip in the average, the on-base percentage. He'll come around. I'm not worried about Bogarts yet. 106 WRC plus is still above average. It's the bottom of this lineup that gets a little ugly. Cronenworth's been lousy this season. Odor's been lousy for years. Matt Carpenter was out of baseball because he was so lousy. Then came back last year for a couple of weeks and hit a bunch of home runs. I guess that won him a job this year. If he's in the lineup, if you want to, you can play him at 2,400. But I mean, only 4 home runs in 191 plate appearances. It's not like you're getting that Matt Carpenter that was alive for a month with the Yankees last year. Austin Nola, Trent Grisham, don't really love it at the bottom of the Phillies, or the Padres rather. So like I said, that's a top-heavy lineup. If it's a funky version of it, you can play some Taijuan Walker. Otherwise, I want neither pitcher. Some Padres, a lot of Phillies. Back to a game that's on both slates. 5 odds are looking bleaker by the minute. Yeah, 426. What was I thinking? All right. There's a couple we can fly through, though, like the Coors Field game and so on. This is an interesting spot. The Giants are showing a ton of value. There's all these cheap prices on the Giants. Going up against Johan Oviedo, I want to get both of these pitchers, but I do think there's a good reason to go to Giants value bats here. It's a good lineup. There are some very effective left-handed power hitters going up against Oviedo, who is allowing a 40.1% hard hit rate. 7.9% barrels is okay. He keeps launch angle down fairly effectively, though. 2.23% home run rate. He's been somewhat targetable in terms of the 4.63 xFIP, 4.75 ERA. He's just kind of an okay pitcher. He does have a little bit of upside going up against the Giants here. He's projecting out fairly well in the model. I think they're lending him a little bit of strikeout upside, 19.4% for him on the year, but 25.4% for that projected lineup. So they'll probably push a little bit of strikeout upside his way if they're not hitting home runs off of him. So that's a situation I'll probably take advantage of. Some shares of Johan Oviedo, particularly at 56 on DK. That's just a highly playable SP2 price. So I think there's a good reason to go there. On the Giants side of things, nobody priced above 4,600 on the DK slate where you find Jock Peterson. Everybody pretty cheap over there. And then nobody above 3,000 on the FanDuel slate. That's why I'm looking at Giants hitters. I like the righties. I like the lefties on at least from 1 through 6. I think you can definitely work with Blake Sable as a lefty, as a second catcher on DK, as an outfielder or a catcher position on FanDuel for 2,800. There's a decent amount of power there. 108 WRC plus on the year. 1 through 7 all have above average WRC plus marks. Decent power upside for a lot of those guys. Good on base skills for a lot of those guys. So I like that spot for Giants value. Not necessarily shining through in terms of the projections, the home run model, but the value numbers, the points per dollar numbers are pretty strong there. Pirates on the other side, less enthusiastic about their opportunity against Alex Cobb. Really like the spot for Cobb. He projects out as one of my better pitchers of the day. Only 8,000 on DK, 91 on FanDuel. I love that spot. 22.5% strikeouts, 5.5% on the walks, and 3.22 xFIP, a 2.91 ERA, and just outstanding at keeping the ball down, keeping the ball in the park. 1.3 degree average launch angle, 6.6% barrels, 1.57% home runs. I don't care about the 44.7% hard hits if everything's on the ground. It's like a Framber Valdez kind of a situation, right? A guy who just cuts the heart out of launch angle, cuts all the power upside out, and he's done it over time. 1.8 degrees last year with a 1.43% home run rate. Year before, 3 degrees, 1.27% home run rate. So it's a sustainable trait for Alex Cobb, who's a good veteran pitcher. I think these prices are a little bit low for this matchup. There's a little bit of strikeout upside for him here. Jack Suwinski is a good home run hitter, but he strikes out 32% of the time. 6.09 in the model. He's over the 10 mark a lot of days. 19 homers on the season, a 275 ISO. All those hard hits and barrels. Not a great spot to roster home run hitters, though, going up against Alex Cobb. If I'm going to Pirates, I'm definitely including Suwinski just as their best player. Brian Reynolds is playable. Carlos Santana, G-Man Choi, maybe Henry Davis at 26, 27. Still no catcher eligibility on the DK slate. Just not a great spot in terms of Pirates. I don't like anybody 6 through 9 here. Yeah, I don't know about a clock attached to a shock collar. That's probably not a great idea to keep me on pace because I don't want to get shocked. Jake, what's going on, buddy? Flying through this one. Trying to get through a bunch of games in a hurry here. 4:30, half hour to go. Most of the slate left to talk about. Minnesota Twins, Oakland Athletics. What was the recap on that one? Was Giants value bats. Alex Cobb, yes. Yohan Oviedo, yes, for value on DK. Pirates, meh, kind of low end. The Twins, I think the Twins are a really good option for stacking today, especially on FanDuel. 3 guys with triple position eligibility for 2,500, 2,400, and 2,700. That's got value in it, regardless of their talents. And those are several relatively talented guys. I talk about Kyle Farmer a decent amount because he's very, very cheap from site to site. 14 home runs, 14 homers last year, 16 homers the year before. Just kind of a sneaky play. He's not a good option as he's a fifth hitter, 5 hitter. I thought he was hitting cleanup today. 5, he's okay. Max Kepler belongs in that cleanup spot against even against a lousy lefty. I like the power upside from Max Kepler. 12 home runs on the season. Just belongs up lineup. Joey Gallo in the lineup against the lefty. Obviously, we're not thinking that Hogan Harris is going to be in this game very long. I would not play any shares of Hogan Harris. I like the upside for the Twins to hit some home runs, provide value. They're just extremely value oriented. Byron Buxton is even cheap at 5,600, 3,300, particularly on FanDuel, very cheap. 15 homers on the season. He's only hitting 205, 295, 430, but still 15 homers, 224 ISO. Carlos Correa is massively disappointed this year, but he's very cheap for it. And then Solano, Farmer, and Castro, all with all those multi-position eligibility, super cheap. Productive guys for counting stats, not great players, any of them, but Solano's got a very good hit tool. Castro steals bases if he gets on. Farmer hits home runs from time to time. Hasn't done a lot this year at the plate, Kyle Farmer. I should point out 197 plate appearances, only 4 homers, a 117 ISO. So it hasn't really come through this year, but I believe in the history in that bat. Ryan Jeffers, Michael A., and Joey Gallo, bottom of the lineup. Playable parts, specifically Gallo lurking late in the lineup for 3,000, 2,700. You guys know I love him. Had Maeda last night, Shannon. Yeah, I had quite a bit of Maeda last night, and yeah, we got the bad version, unfortunately, which sucked. I don't feel stupid for saying sure, Maeda will go over 15.5 outs yesterday. Stupid baseball. Yeah, I'm with you. I thought he was gonna I thought he was primed for a good start. That was a miss last night for sure. Twins bats for sure, and then Pablo Lopez, just blast off in his projection. I didn't change anything about it. I didn't tinker with the innings because it's a good spot against the Athletics here. It's probably a little bit high, but I left it high. Didn't really care. He's actually outpacing Spencer Strider by a little bit, but he's pitching fantastically against the worst lineup in baseball, or one of. 30.5% strikeout rate, 6.6% walks, a 3.44 xFIP, underneath a 3.89 ERA. 14.6% swinging strikes is one of the better swinging strike marks in the league. Doesn't really allow any power or hard hits, 35.5% hard hits, 87.4 miles an hour exit velo. Totally worth the 10-2, 10-9. Arguably cheap on DraftKings, even at 10-2, just going up against this A's lineup. They stacked some lefties in here. I don't really care when those lefties are Tony Kemp, Ryan Notice, JJ Bleday. Seth Brown's okay. Hasn't been great this year, but 8 homers and 178 plate appearances. Hit 25 last year with 11 stolen bases. I just don't really like this lineup. Zach Geloff and Tyler Soderstrom in the lineup again. 2 cheap premium rookies. Geloff's getting a projection here. I meant to go in before I started the show and add these guys so that I would get a projection. I just ran out of time. But Geloff getting a home run model projection anyway, with the team leading 8.4. He was my home run pick for this team. Second base, third base eligible on DK, 2,700. That's not bad. Both of these guys are high-end rookies. These guys are playable if you're going to A's stacks. I wouldn't go out of my way to just decide to stack A's just so I can get to shares of them. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to A's, I would include them, but I wouldn't go to A's so that you can play them. I think I said it the exact same way both times. So no Hogan Harris, enthusiasm about Pablo Lopez, enthusiasm about the Twins, upside on their own, even if they were at higher prices, and then just value-based upside for days with the Twins lineup. No real interest in the A's. If I'm going to A's, it would probably be like Notable Day, Brown, and the 2 rookies. I don't really need Tony Kemp. I don't really need Cody Thomas in here, Nick Allen, Jace Peterson. So it's really those 5 guys. Brewers against the Reds. How about that Corbin Burns performance? Jeez. Whew. back to form. That was certainly not good for the red stacks that I built, but it was good for the handful of Corbin Burnes lineups that I had, and certainly good for anybody who played him out there last night. We definitely talked a few times about not being sold on him being shot. We'll see how it continues for the rest of the season. Obviously, he's been kind of a roller coaster this year. Freddie Peralta on the bump tonight. Also, just a weird year for Freddie. Still striking out a good amount of hitters, 27% strikeouts in 92 innings over 17 starts. Doesn't typically work too deep into games. Has had issues with the home runs this year, which is uncharacteristic for him. 4.04% home run rate, 9.3% barrels. Last year, that was 3.5% barrels, a 1.89% home run rate. Year before, 6% barrels, a 2.41% home run rate. Always allows launch angle, so it's not a launch angle thing. Obviously more hard hits this year, which accounts for most of it in the barrel rate there, but a big jump in barrel rate, in home run upside. So I think Freddie's somewhat targetable here with Reds bats in this stadium. I'll probably have some I would probably have some shares of Freddie Peralta as well, because I still believe in the upside. Obviously, this Reds team can provide strikeouts to good pitchers. There's several guys pushing 30% strikeout rates, including some of their better players in the lineup here. So I think there's room for Freddie Peralta at 9,000, 9,300, reason to play him, but he doesn't project out well. Andrew Abbott on the other side burnt us the one time that he projected well, the last time out in my model here. Obviously screwed us in that one, while all along we were saying, look at his xFIP, look at the power that he allows, the premium contact he allows, look at the advanced walks, like all those different things that added up to like he's pitching way over his head. We finally got on board last time, we got burnt. That's how baseball works. I'm not really over the moon about him in this spot. 9,500, 10,000. He projects okay. 28.3. Like, I would have some shares of him, but I don't know that I'm going to get carried. That I would get carried away at those prices. Okay matchup against the Brewers. 23.8% strikeout rate for that confirmed lineup. Not a great lineup, especially from like 4 down. Gets kind of hairy if you're looking to stack Brewers. They're very, very cheap. I do think you can go there for value against Abbott. They're also playing in this ballpark. They've got a little bit of upside against lefties, but they're just not great. They've been kind of not shambles, but kind of a mediocre team so far this year in terms of DFS purposes. Yeah, they're Stephen Leibowitz points out they're in the race in that division. They may look to add pieces. I think they could, especially with that pitching staff. Like if that pitching staff comes around to what they should be, they wouldn't necessarily need to add pieces to the staff. They could just go out and add a couple good bats. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But in this spot, they're looking a little bit top heavy for DFS purposes. I don't know how much Abbott I would have, though. The 4.36 xFIP over the 2.38 ERA. The xFIP is the much more honest number here, and it's 2 runs higher than the ERA. We saw him give up, 6, I think, in the last one. He's giving up a ton of premium contact, 11.5% barrels, 43.3% hard hits, 90.9 miles an hour of exit velo, a 3.61% home run rate. He's probably lucky to have that below 4, probably lucky to have that below 5. Gives up an average launch angle of 26.1 degrees. So he's a fly ball pitcher that gives up all this contact. He's gotten a little lucky to keep this here. 11.4% swinging strikes, very good. 28.9% strikeout rate, very good. Obviously, there's upside there. I would play him against the Brewers, but I think I would have some Brewers coming back the other way. It's just you focus on Yelich, who loses a little bit in his power upside against a fellow lefty. William Contreras, Willie Adames, flawed hitters, but from the right side of the plate, they've got power upside. Owen Miller, not a cleanup hitter, not an ideal cleanup hitter, but 284, 330, 396 this year, 3% below average creating runs, 12 steals, 4 home runs. Tyrone Taylor, we've talked about, dead minimum price on DK, 2,100 on FanDuel. Good amount of power upside, 17 home runs and a handful of plate appearances last year. Blake Perkins, Andrew Monasterio, Bryce Turang, and then Joey Weimer. I think Weimer's the most interesting in the bunch, 12 homers, 11 steals this season in 306 plate appearances. Wildly inconsistent, 214, 297, 399 hitter, 89 WRC plus. So not a consistent guy, but definitely a guy with DFS upside from the bottom of the lineup, 2,400, 2,700. Maybe it turns the lineup over, acts as a wraparound play for you. Red side of things. Red side of things. TJ Friedel, Matt McClain, Jake Fraley, Ellie De La Cruz, Jonathan India, Joey Votto, Spencer Steer, 1 through 7. I love that lineup. I really like playing these guys. They're all still relatively affordable outside of Ellie, and everybody else helped average down Ellie's ridiculous prices. He's superstar pricing because he's a burgeoning superstar at the plate already. 48.3% hard hits, 4 home runs, 16 steals. a 315, 353, 508 triple slash, a 124 WRC plus, and just obviously like a superhero on the base paths when he's stealing bases, stealing home plate. Like, he's just ridiculous. Friedel, good season so far, 6 homers, 16 steals, a 121 WRC plus. McClain, an outstanding rookie with second base and shortstop eligibility. He's got 7 homers, 7 steals, and 239 plate appearances, a 129 WRC plus. Fraley, outrageous so far this year, 11 homers, 16 stolen bases, and 265 from the left side of the plate. India, their best player for the last few seasons, sitting 5th in the lineup now. 13 homers, 12 stolen bases, drops to 5th so that Jake Fraley can slide up to 3rd with his lefty power. Needed to take a sip so I didn't cough directly into the microphone there. Joey Votto, 7 homers and 70 plate appearances since coming back to the lineup, has been just outrageous. Was the best player in Yahoo season-long fantasy baseball for the week before the All-Star break. Go Joey. Love Joey Votto. Spencer Steer, totally playable third base, outfield, or outfield first base, depending on which site. 5,100, 3,600. Great year for him. 14 homers, 9 steals, 122 WRC plus. Even Will Benson, from the bottom of the lineup. 138 plate appearances, still a very small sample, but 2,500, 2,800 for a guy, 292, 384, 492, 32% better than average, creating runs, 4 homers, 7 steals, a 200 ISO in the small sample. Absolutely, sign me up for some Will Benson if I'm building a ton of red stacks. Very justifiable. Moving on. This one also only on the DK slate. Forgive me, DK fans, we're going to kind of fly through this one. I don't think we want either one of these pitchers. Cole Ragans, Cooper Criswell. I just don't see a need to go to either one of these guys. They're relievers. They're AAA pitchers. Ragans got stretched out in 4 lousy starts in AAA after 24 1/3 out of the bullpen earlier in the season. Gives up all those walks, gives up a ton of premium contact, an ERA, high xFIP. Criswell, 7,500, 5,500, 23.2% strikeouts, a 4.12 xFIP. He's a little bit better between these two guys. I just think you can target both of these guys. Like maybe Criswell, if I could get a guarantee of 5 innings, would have some value at the DK price, but not really at 7,500. If the prices were reversed, he was 55, then maybe. But even then, I'd want a guarantee of 5 innings, and I don't have it. So I don't love that outside of the fact that the Royals lend a lot of strikeout upside. Like, he could come out, pitch 3 innings and strike out 6 of these hitters, which I still don't know really, does that make value at 75? Probably pretty close. So Royals, I don't really need Royals. Michael Garcia, mediocre from the top spot, 1% better than average, decent hit tool. Bobby Witt pushing the waterline for run creation at 99. Obviously star caliber output in terms of his counting stats, 14 homers, 27 steals. You want to see him get a little bit better, get on base a little bit more, become the star that he should be. Sal Perez, major power as a catcher. Kyle Isbell, MJ Melendez, Nick Prado, don't really need any of them, but any one of them is workable into a Royal stack if you're building it. Lefty power for all those guys, believable lefty power. They haven't really returned good results, but all of them have either a decent barrel rate or a decent hard hit rate or both. So I believe in those left-handed bats. They just all strike out at a decent clip. Isbell's not great, but he's very cheap. We'll see what order they fall into, but I don't love the middle of the lineup, and then the bottom of the lineup is pretty atrocious with Drew Waters, Michael Massey, and Nicky Lopez. So no real need to get over the top with Royals. Definitely want to get to Rays. They're fairly cheap for who they are and who they've been so far this season. Like Brandon Lau sneaking back in the lineup at 4,200 is highly affordable against Cole Ragans, who won't be in the game very long, and then the Royals bullpen. Jose Siri, major home run upside at 3,300, 3,200. Margot, I don't know that we get Margot hitting 5th. That's kind of a weird spot. He's probably going to be down here somewhere. Maybe Lowe creeps up to the 5th spot, or Lau, or whichever he is, Lau. Paredes, Arosarena, Harold Ramirez, Wander Franco, obviously amazing talent up from the top spots. All these guys have been producing home runs. All these guys run. All these guys create runs. There's no reason to avoid going to Rays here. I expect they'll be a little bit popular for these prices on the DK slate. It doesn't really matter. I think there's major upside for the Tampa Bay Rays in this spot. They were sitting at a 5.70 run implied total in Vegas. If I just need one more selling point on this one, it's just a great spot for the Rays. So I think you can go over the top with Rays interest on the DK slate. Back to the combined slate with the Dodgers and the Mets. Kodai Senga taking the mound. I'm kind of seeing Senga the same way I was talking about Justin Verlander yesterday. Like, I believe, and Senga's been pitching better than Verlander overall this season. 29.5% strikeout rate, but I believe he gets in trouble with this 12.3% walk rate with his inefficiency on the mound. The fact that he only pitches like 5 innings, 5 and change innings, doesn't really work deep into ball games. Going up against a low strikeout Dodgers team that knows how to draw walks. Like, look at all these very low strikeout rates. Very good walk rates down here as well. It's just a bad spot. So I do believe in Kodai Senga. I think even at the price, he's okay, 96, 98, if you wanted to throw a few darts. Against a lot of other teams with this pitcher at those prices, I'd be kind of interested here. I feel like the model's projecting him fairly, but on the high side, right? Like, that's not an unbelievable projection, but it's a high projection. Going up against this Dodgers team. He's got the strikeout upside. He's got the strikeout acumen, but they're not going to give any plate appearances away. So I don't love the spot for Senga. He wastes too many pitches. He's inefficient on the mound. Like I said, that splitter in the dirt is a waste pitch a lot of the time, especially when he's not perfectly on form. On the other side, Gonsolin, 7,400, 8,000. Doesn't project great. 18.9% strikeouts, 9% walks this year, 3.86 ERA, but a 5.02 xFIP. I believe he's more this guy right now. I don't love that spot. Doesn't really lead me running to a lot of Mets stacks. Between the two sides, I probably prefer the Dodgers, even though they're facing the better of these two pitchers. The Mets, if I'm going there, I'm going to Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor. That's the version of the lineup that has McNeil hitting third, which I hate. Daniel Vogelbach, Starlin Marte, DJ Stewart in the outfield today for 24,200. He's made 6 plate appearances. Don't know much about DJ Stewart. Apologies for that one. Didn't expect him in there. Francisco Alvarez, totally playable as a catcher bat, 17 home runs on the season and an outstanding breakout year. 3,600, 2,800 for the rookie. Brett Baty also cheap down there, lurking down the bottom of the lineup, 26.25. I point him out not for the 242, 312, 351, the 5 homers. It's been mediocre in terms of what the statistical line says, but I like the 47.4% hard hits for that cheap price at third base. So Brett Baty's somewhat interesting there. Gonsolin's playable at 74 on DK, 8,000 on FanDuel. You can throw a few darts at him. He's been a better pitcher over time. Better strikeout rates in years past, 23.9% last year, 27.2% the year before. Just hasn't been good this year. I don't like to get too deep into a 13 starts, 67 and 2/3 plate appearance, 67 and 2/3 innings, falling apart here, sample. So he's moderately playable, but the Mets are good enough that I don't really need to tangle with him when he doesn't project well. Dodger side, Mookie, Freddie, Will, Max, JD, top 5 hitters off the top, very, very easy to go to. The 3 lefties are in the lineup with Peralta, Hayward, and Outman, all for cheap prices in the outfield. Any one of those guys combines really well with any 5 of these guys, any 4 or 5 of those guys. Just stack the Dodgers. You can go to this team as much as you want to. They're not a super high priority. They projected better than I would maybe think they would against Kodai Senga. They were 3rd in the stacks board in terms of collective projection, 6th by FanDuel value, 13th by DK points per dollar value, 3rd by home runs. So maybe even more upside than I'm selling them on. You see decent home run marks here. So like the spot for the Dodgers. Let's move on. Nationals against a lefty and a lefty that people love to target. I think the Nats are going to be one of the more popular value stacks on the board. If they do gain popularity, I think they're entirely skippable. If they're not overly popular, you can go here. Lane Thomas, not crazy aggressively, but moderate shares. They project down at the bottom of the board by aggregate fantasy points, but they are 11th by home run upside. And that's guys like Lane Thomas with his value against the lefty, Keibert Ruiz, Stone Garrett. If you get Riley Adams in the lineup, he's highly playable for his quality against lefties in a small sample so far. Michael Chavis, maybe a little bit of quality against the lefty. Hasn't really shown it very much this season, but hasn't really gotten in many games this season. Gets in from time to time against lefties. Triple position eligibility for 21 on FanDuel, dual on DK. So a playable bat there. Their quality comes from Lane Thomas, some from Joey Meneses, a little bit of Keibert Ruiz, and definitely Stone Garrett when they're facing a lefty. Those are your premium bats here. CJ Abrams would be a really weird choice. He's been their worst hitter against left-handed pitching so far this season as a lefty. I don't get why he would be in the top spot. I guess that's what they did the last time they faced a lefty, so that's what Labs had as their projected. I don't agree with it there. You'll see somebody else in that spot. Cards, definitely playable against Jake Irvin. One of the top priority stacks, in my opinion. I think they're cheap for their talent, for their upside. Definite home run upside with some of these guys. Several 9s in the home run model, pushing 10s with Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Nolan Gorman. I like all 3 of those power bats, and then I like all the surrounding pieces. Brendan Donovan's great for run creation. All these guys above average for run creation. Everybody in the projected lineup above average for run creation on the season. So I really like the spot for just mixing and matching shares of the Jordan Walkers, Wilson Contreras, Lars Nootbaars of the world, Brendan Donovans of the world, Paul DeJong from the bottom of the lineup, in with shares of Gorman, Arenado, and Goldschmidt. Those are your 3 cornerstones. Those are your 3 key pieces in these stacks. Gorman with multi-position at second and third for 44.29. 17 homers on the season, took a nosedive for quality, and he's going to be a roller coaster of a hitter. But there is monumental power in that bat. So love going to shares of him, especially if he's not all that highly owned. I think it's a great spot for the Cards. They were the 6th team by fantasy points, 5th by home run upside. So minor interest in national stacks, more so if they're unpopular as a value play. I think it's fine as a value platoon kind of a play against a lefty. Think Steven Matz, though, maybe at 5,200 on the DK slate. I think you can get away with that. He had a really good start right before the break. Not that we're looking at that, but 71 2/3 innings, 11 starts, a handful of handful of appearances out of the bullpen. And what I liked about the start right before the break is that he pitched a full game. He wasn't like short started in that spot. So I think there's minor upside. He went 5 1/3, 9 strikeouts, 2 hits and an unearned run to the White Sox. And I think the White Sox are a better lineup than this Nationals lineup. So minor upside for Steven Matz at 52. It wouldn't be the craziest dart throw in the world. 21.8% strikeout rate this year, a 3.82 xFIP that looks a lot better than his 4.65 ERA. It's not like he's gotten tattooed for power, 2.52% home runs, 5.5% barrels. You could even maybe sell me on a few shares at 72 on FanDuel. I don't think I need it on the FanDuel slate. This is a nice value price on the DK slate. Kind of enthusiastic thumbs up for value shares of Steven Matz, especially if he doesn't get that popular. I don't know what his popularity looks like. So some shares of Nationals value, no shares of Jake Irvin, some shares of DK Steven Matz, and definite interest in the Cardinals bats. Need to pick up the pace. Only 4 games left. One of them to Coors Field, 9 minutes. I think we're going over, but not tragically so. Lance Lynn is targetable on the mound with Braves bats. They're the leading team in the stack tool. They're number 1 by points, number 2 by home runs. They switch places with the Yanks, who are number 2 by points and number 1 by home runs against Connor Siebold in the next game at Coors Field. The Braves look outrageous in this spot. The bad with Lance Lynn, 10.5% barrels, 4.82% home runs so far this year. That's really bad. The bad is in the ERA as well, 6.03 ERA. The good with Lance Lynn, 27.9% strikeout rate, 3.74 xFIP. That's way better than a 6.03 ERA. 2.5 runs better. That's significant. 14.1% swinging strike rate. That's one of the better swinging strike rates in the entire league. Lance Lynn is still Lance Lynn. He's had a few bad games, few bumps in the road, few obvious bad spots for power, but he's also had those few monster strikeout games. He only costs 6,600 on the DK slate. He's appropriately priced at 9,000 on the FanDuel slate. He does not project well. I expect the Braves to succeed in this spot significantly. It's the everyday version of the Braves lineup that's just been rolling over pitching all year long. They've got all this power. They've got all these home runs, all these great run creation guys. There's just enough upside for Lance Lynn at that price. I can buy shares of Lance Lynn for 6,600. I really don't care about the downside. It's all upside at that price. The FanDuel price is, like I said, it's the correct price, which puts him kind of out of play. You could get a good game from him at 9,000, but I don't know that I need to go there or want to go there against this Braves lineup. So it's just a price play on DK. Getting this pitcher at that price against anybody, you could stack an all-star team against him. At that price, I'll play Lance Lynn. Brave side of things, enthusiasm about them against Lance Lynn, though, for all that power upside that he's yielded. Acuna, Albies, Riley, Olsen, Murphy, Ozuna, Rosario, Arcia, Michael Harris. How about that Orlando Arcia last night? Just another really strong game as a value play. What sucks, though, lost his triple position eligibility on FanDuel. He's just a shortstop now. 4,200, 2,700. I think he can still go there. They're the best 8-9 hitters in the league this year. It's them and it's the 2 guys from Texas. And nobody else is really even close to the production that these guys can provide. So love going 1 through 9 with this Braves lineup. Stack them in any combination you can afford. Stack them with offbeat pitchers. Use them in combination with like highly owned pitchers that are expensive if you can figure out how to do it. I think that creates a lot of value because it's a non-optimizer play. Just things that don't go naturally through optimizers, I love to try and get to in tournaments. And I love to try and force through optimizers or force through my sorting process. Doesn't come up on its own a ton. You got to do some work to get there, but I think it's worth doing, particularly with this Braves team. Spencer Strider buried the lead, second highest projection on the slate. You can see he's got outpaced nicely by that Pablo Lopez projection, which, like I said, I didn't cull it. Maybe I should have, maybe I could have, but I believe in Pablo Lopez and that major upside that he was showing there. I believe also in Spencer Strider, though, for the price. Best pitcher in baseball, 38.9% strikeout rate, 19.4% swinging strike rate. That is the highest in baseball, 34.5% CSW. Believe that's still the highest CSW in baseball as well. Just a dominant pitcher. Best pitcher in baseball since his debut in the middle of last season. The home runs are up a little bit this year. We got to find a wart. 3.04% home run rate, up from 1 something last year. Barrels are up a little bit, but he's Spencer Strider going up against a struggling White Sox team. I love the spot. I'll have tons of it if I was building lineups. I would have tons of it, I should say. You can maybe go to a few shares of White Sox in a super contrarian sense. If I'm doing that, I'm looking at Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, Andrew Vaughn, Jake Berger. Just that 4-man right in the middle of the lineup there. If you need a 5th guy, maybe you bolt on Oscar Colas in the 8th spot. You can obviously bolt on Benintendi or Timmy Anderson for correlation ahead of them, but those guys have both been bad this season, where Colas maybe provides sneaky power upside at 2,300, 2,100 that lets you buy something else that's better. Like the difference between Colas at that price and these guys, what they've done this year at this price, not all that big. So I think if you need that 5th man, you can go to Colas there. So it's enthusiasm about the Braves, enthusiasm about Spencer Strider, and enthusiasm about Lance Lynn, quite honestly, at that DK price. Only on DK. Yankees, Rockies. Yankees disappointed tragically yesterday. Who didn't see that coming, right? I mean, obviously most of us, because I had a ton of them. The slate had a ton of them. The public had a ton of them. I was below the field, but I had a lot of key Yankee stacks. Like, I shouldn't have gone to where I did in the more expensive tournaments, which I think was my mistake yesterday. I didn't mind where I got to versus the field in the main tournament where I had 150 lineups. But in some of the others, I didn't love that I went to some Yankees after I thought about it a little bit. But it was too late to change. Gleyber Torres, Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo, Harrison Bader, Josh Donaldson, Billy McKinney, Anthony Volpe. You can play any of those guys. You can play combinations of those guys. It's a Coors Field game. They're the highest total team on the slate. I'm not really breaking any new ground here going up against Connor Siebold. I don't think I need to tell anybody that Siebold's not in play. I also don't think Clark Schmidt is in play. 58 on DK is at least the right price. 22.7% strikeout rate. He's been effective this year, but I don't love the barrel rate, the exit velocity, the hard hit rate in this ballpark. Even if it doesn't go for home run upside, it's just such a big park that those balls might drop in. You know, things that may not drop in other ballparks. There's just a lot of room there. So I don't love it for Clark Schmidt. 4.40 ERA, a 4.29 xFIP. He's been fine, but the price is correct. I just don't like it at Coors Field. Rockies on the other side doesn't lead me to a ton of Rockies, but they had a decent game anyway yesterday, put up a handful of runs. They were the better of the 2 Coors Field teams yesterday, and they could definitely do that again today. Profar I don't like at the top, but Bryant, McMahon, I definitely like. McMahon gets his quality back with a righty on the mound, so there's home run upside there. Elias Diaz, decent catcher bat. CJ Cron, Nolan Jones, obvious power for those 2 guys. 4,000, 4,100 on DK, 3,000, 3,200 on FanDuel. You get Jones in the outfield on both sites, so I like that spot. He hit his 6th homer. Jones hit his 6th homer of the year yesterday. Cron has 7 in 189 plate appearances. Has been a major source of power in years past. 14.6% barrels. Having a CJ Cron year for while he's been here. Just had an injury that cost him most of the season. Tovar, Castro, Doyle. It's a playable bottom end. If you're building a ton of Rocky stacks in a contrarian sense, you could do worse than these 3 guys at the bottom of the lineup. None of them have been above average for run creation. Some of them tragically below average, but the counting stats are okay. Harold Castro has a decent hit tool. The 2 rookies are providing okay counting stats. So enthusiasm about both bats on both sides, I guess. Like tempered enthusiasm about the Rockies. Definitely enthusiasm, but kind of cut down by the public popularity for the Yanks. Astros got to Shohei Ohtani a little bit last night, huh? That was, I think they got those runs off Ohtani. I didn't actually check. I saw that they had some runs, though. Reed Detmer's on the bump today. Obviously not Shohei Ohtani, but showing a pretty good projection. 31.67 on the FanDuel scoring, 29.2% strikeout rate for him in 85 2/3 this year, 16 starts, 3.85 xFIP, a 4.31 ERA, giving up a 3.01% home run rate at 90.5 miles an hour of exit velo. I'm not that worried about the home runs. going up against this Astros team who hasn't been really hitting all that many of them. There's 4 guys in the lineup with double-digit home runs, but kind of unreliable power hitters that I'm not that afraid of without Jordan Alvarez in the lineup, without Jose Altuve in the lineup. So a little bit of interest in Reed Detmers, particularly at 83 on the DK slate. For all the strikeouts he's posted this year, I think there's definite upside there. 13.9% swinging strikes, very nice little swinging strike total. 97 is pushing it on the FanDuel slate. Probably worth getting to given how he projects, given what he looks like here. But I don't love the price on FanDuel. I'm much more enthusiastic about the DK price. Astros on the other side, weak version of this Astros lineup. Yeah, they can get to pitchers. They've still got Kyle Tucker. They've still got Alex Bregman. Dubon in the leadoff spot, not a great option. Abreu struggled all season, but kind of coming on up to a 77 WRC plus, 7 home runs. Jainer Diaz has been very good, 13.5% barrels, 45.9% hard hits, 10 homers on the season. That's pretty good for 188 plate appearances from a guy who was a backup catcher when the year started. Chas McCormick, I like the outfield bat there. Cheap prices, usually low ownership for McCormick, 2,800, 3,000, 8 homers on the season, 9 stolen bases, a 123 WRC plus. That's 5 o'clock. I got to stop talking. That's it. Show's over. Just kidding. My buddy Brian, who I'm going to the show with, is, as far as I know, not here yet anyway. I would have heard him come in, so it doesn't really matter. All I got to do is put my socks and shoes on and walk out the door anyway. So let's talk through the Angels side of things. Angels are going up against Framber Valdez. You can see what Framber does to these home run metrics. Even Shohei Ohtani is below the magic number for home runs. He leads the league with 32 home runs on the season. 303, 387, 659, triple slash, 355 ISO. If anybody can take Framber deep, it's Shohei Ohtani. But Framber is fantastic at cutting launch angle. He's at a positive number this year at 3.5 degree average launch angle, but that's still outstanding. Last year was negative 3.6. The year before was negative 5.5, but still not allowing any home runs. 2.10% home runs the year before, 1.33 last year, 1.58 this year. I don't care when the guys hit the ball hard against him when it's on the ground. So we're not worried about Framber. He's back up to a 26.2% strikeout rate this year, so he's pitching really, really well overall. Was dealing with some soreness before the break, but seems okay. 17 starts, 111 innings. Typically goes deep into ball games. There's some strikeout potential against this Angels team. We saw that they had a really funky version of the lineup last night. We'll see what we get today. Made a few call-ups with Zach Neto returning to the lineup, with Michael Stefanich returning to the lineup. I think Neto will probably be in that leadoff spot, 2,700 on both sites. Decent hit tool, decent output for counting stats in his 204 plate appearances, a 108 WRC plus. I like him ahead of Shohei Ohtani, Taylor Ward, Hunter Renfroe, Eduardo Escobar, Luis Renifo even. But those are guys that, when I'm rostering these guys, I'm kind of just looking for a home run. Like, I'm not really looking at these guys for their hit tool, their on-base skills. You can see that these are fairly low averages, fairly low on-base percentages, not great marks for run creation. Against a guy who I just finished talking about how he limits home runs so well for the last 3 years, I don't know that that's a good play. I like the cheapness, I like the multi-position, but I don't know how many Angel stacks I need against Framber here. At 9,800, I'd much rather go to the Framber Valdez side of that on DK. And at 10.7, I would have a bunch of them on FanDuel. I think he'll probably not be as popular as he should be in that spot on FanDuel. You can see he projects lower than Reed Detmers by a point and change, but I really like that spot, and I really believe in Framber Valdez. When he's unpopular, I like to get there. I'm not sure what the popularity looks like, but I don't remember him being up at the top of the board when I looked at RG's numbers earlier today. Whew, last game. All right, we're not that far over. I mean, I would have had way over on that 5 o'clock. Larry asks, are you going to that new barbecue place in Jersey City? I went there last month. It's really good. Boots and Bones, is that what it's called, Larry? I haven't heard of the place, but I would love to go. I love barbecue, and there's a couple decent spots around, but if they had one more good one, I'd be pretty psyched about it. Shannon's in the chat. We got Jake in there. Jake calling for Giolito to go to the Rays. It wouldn't surprise me. That would be a good destination for him. It would be fun to see him pitch on that team, too, and make a run. All right, I think we can draw pitchers for sure from this one. George Kirby projects at the top of the board, one of 3 pitchers at the top of the board that I really like, along with Pablo Lopez and Spencer Strider. Love Kirby for his walk rate, 2.3%. That's approaching like Quantum Realm type walk rate, hanging out with that guy that looks like broccoli in the Quantum Realm. 9,300, 10.3 from site to site. I don't really care that he only strikes out 20.8%. When he's going up against a team like the Tigers, there's just good depth of innings there. There's good opportunity for clean innings because he doesn't get himself in trouble via the free passes. And I think they'll lend him a little bit of strikeout upside here. 23.8% collectively for this projected lineup. I think they were a little bit worse in terms of the against right-handed. When I looked at the splits, I think it was a little bit higher, but that was for the entire active roster too. That might have just been from that. But Kirby's a very, very good pitcher even for these prices. So I like the Kirby spot here. Doesn't give up many home runs. Very good ERA, xFIP, but all that. Michael Lorenz on the other side, Tigers All-Star, I believe. Probably didn't really earn it if we're thinking league-wide, but one of their better players this year. 18.9% strikeout rate, a 4.03 ERA, a 4.21 xFIP, 5.7% walks. I can probably play a few shares of Michael Lorenz, honestly. For $7,000 on DK, it's a reasonable enough dart throw. 8,200 on FanDuel, given that the Mariners lineup has a 25.8% aggregate strikeout rate. They push a ton of strikeouts in the direction of opposing pitchers. So with the idea of a collection of guys who are going to strike out quite a bit, if he avoids power, which has not been a terrible problem for him this year, 90 miles an hour of exit velo we don't like to see, 40+% hard hits, 8.4% barrels, but only 3.15% home runs. I don't think he blows the doors off the slate, so 8,200 on the FanDuel slate, I kind of question the value there, but at 7,000 as a DK SP2, I think Lorenz is kind of on the board. Playable, not great, playable. Seattle stacks at the same time. Grab their power bats. Julio, Teoscar, Eugenio, Jared Kelenic, Kyle Raleigh, Mike Ford. Even Mike Ford. Weird season. Just a weird season for some of these quad A guys. 9 home runs in 92 plate appearances, a 369 ISO, 47.5% hard hits, 16.9% barrels, 2,300 on DK, 26 on FanDuel. None of that is predictive for what he's going to continue doing, but at those prices, if he's going to continue doing it, I want to at least be part of finding out. So if I'm going to Mariners, I think you can go as deep in the lineup as Mike Ford hitting 8th. You'd rather be playing the higher up guys like Julio, like Teoscar. Crawford and France are both correlated scoring plays, both decent hit tools, decent on base skills amongst all those power hitters, and don't strike out as much as those guys. So those are your guys who are going to maybe put the ball in play, maybe get on base. The Tigers going up against Kirby here, I don't really like it because he's not going to put extra guys on for the most part. So even if you get that home run, I feel like it's probably going to just be like a solo shot, maybe a 2-run homer. Maybe he runs into a little bit of a jam, but I don't expect them to get to Kirby here. If I did go there, it would be exclusively the lefties and Spencer Torkelson. Javi Baez and Miguel Cabrera are entirely skippable, as is Eric Haas. Any one of them could have a good game. None of them have been good this season. And Miggy's not been himself for years now. Javi Baez not been himself for quite a while now. Haas fell apart at the plate this year. So McKinstry, sure, 95 WRC plus on the season is not great, but 6 home runs, 12 stolen bases, has been involved at least. If he's hitting leadoff, sure, at cheap prices with multi-position, you can go there. Riley Green is their best hitter, hits lefty, 4,700, 3,000. You can definitely go to him, 131 WRC plus. Had an injury, missed a lot of time, but 237 plate appearances, has been good in that sample. Torkelson has been improving at the plate, 12% barrels, 48.6% hard hits, 12 homers to lead the team. He's my righty that I would put into stacks here. And then Carpenter and Baddoo. Carpenter is a good power hitter, 9 home runs on the season and 170 plate appearances, a 237 ISO, 125 WRC plus from the left side. A little bit cheap for his upside for power. And then Akil Baddoo, 2,400, 2,300 is more playable than either Baez or Cabrera. 4 home runs on the season, 6 stolen bases, and 95 WRC plus, 180 plate appearances. Miggy has crept his way up to a 87 WRC plus, but 245, 328, 325, 1 home run on the season, a .08 ISO. What are we really chasing with Miguel Cabrera shares? So I don't love Baez, Cabrera, or the bottom 2 hitters. It's exclusively those 4 lefties and Spencer Torkelson if I'm going to Tigers. Baez is one of the worst contracts. Yeah, Baez is like the 5 worst contracts in baseball. All just Javi Baez. That is a bad contract. I talked about it earlier in the season. I don't know if it's just not trying. I don't know if he's just physically shot. Like he shows it in spurts. I wonder what would happen if he got traded to a contending team. All right, gang. That is the long and short of it. Still. Guess might have been traffic on the way to Jersey City. But to answer the question that wasn't really asked, we're going to probably grab a bite in Hoboken before heading into the city, and then we're seeing a show at Irving Plaza. Show I didn't even remember that I was going to until he reminded me earlier this week. Just kind of a something to do show. It's Less Than Jake, the ska band from the punk ska from the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. They're apparently still around. We're big in the punk scene, but there weren't a lot of shows to choose from this year for whatever reason in the Jersey, New York area right now, or at least earlier this summer. So hopefully some stuff coming up later in the year, but it should be a fun time. Some beers, some burgers, some good music, hanging out, getting into some trouble. Who knows what'll happen. Tortorette doesn't like trouble anymore. My buddy Brian. I think I talked about this when we went to the Yankee game. I was saying like, yeah, we'll have a bunch of beers at the city. We'll mix it up on our way home, wander around for a while, see if we can get into some trouble. He's like, I'm old. I just want to have like 3 beers and then like go to bed. Like, all right. So that's what we did. We had fun. It was a great time. Came back, had a bunch of beers, more than 3 in the course of the day. Came back, crashed fairly early that day, but it'll probably be like that. Anywho, gang, that's it. Let's take a quick look at the pitching board. We can do that before we punch out. Everybody saying thanks. You're welcome, but I've got a minute. Pablo with a bullet at the top of the board. Like I said, this is probably a little bit high, but I left it alone. Strider, Kirby, these are your 3 obvious targets for pitching. All in good matchups, all outstanding pitchers. Kirby needs to find a few strikeouts along the way, but has the upside for like, a 7-8 inning start with clean innings. I don't want to call for the complete game shutout, but Alex Cobb, I like quite a bit for 91, 8,000. Love the opportunity for him to keep the ball in the yard, pitch clean innings, find some strikeouts at those prices against Pittsburgh. Detmers projecting into reasonable number there for 97.83 going up against Houston. Oviedo, I talked about really liking the upside for the San Francisco bats at value prices, but I think there's upside for Oviedo as well. Looking for strikeouts at 8,300, and I love them at the 5,600 price there. That's a great value play. Kyle Gibson at a $6,000 price is a strong value play, and I also like Steven Matz at 52 going up against that Nationals team that does hit lefties better, but I think Matz is respectable enough for 5,200. I think you could throw a few darts at it. So those 3 guys are my 3 dart plays on for value on DK, but I think these guys are both very strong at value prices on DK. Braxton Garrett is good on the DK slate. Even Gonsolin, arguably a decent play on DK. And then I just talked about Lorenz, maybe a little meat on the bone there. And even though he doesn't project well, Lance Lynn at 66 going up against the Braves. There's a lot of value directions that you can go on the DK slate here. I would be mixing and matching a lot of those guys in with just like these 3 top-end pitchers as my SP1s. I think you can rotate through a lot of that, gets you to a lot of premium stacks like Atlanta, like the Yankees at Coors Field, like the Dodgers, whoever the hell else is up at the top of the board. The Twins were a team, not that you need a lot of value to help you get to the Twins, but I think there's tons and tons of upside here. So top 3 starters, these are where you want to spend. From here through here, plus these 2 guys, is like a big rotation of value pitching. I know that, a couple of these guys are more toward the high end. Like I would include Fromber in that rotation of high end guys. I would include not so much Senga. Like if I'm taking anybody out of this with like that's probably a little high or I don't really trust it, it's probably Senga, just with his inefficiency, like I talked about. I like the projection. I believe in that projection, but at price, I don't know if I need this pitcher at that projection against that team. All right. That is it. Lance Lynn showcase night, says Stephen Leibowitz, for those that want a narrative. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just like him because he's Lance Lynn at that cheapo price. But hey, who knows? Maybe the Braves are, well, I guess they would want to pound him if they were looking to trade for him. So they would want to ruin his showcase night. So that logic doesn't really work out. If I try and twist it even further, maybe that's upside for the Braves. Maybe they want to trade for Lance Lynn. They're telling the guys, hey, go crush this guy. Hit 10 home runs against him today because we want to trade for him. We want to lower the price, lower everybody's interest. Narratives work all directions. All right, gang, this was a fun one. 12 minutes over the estimate. So, and hey, this is our first, I think this is our first less than an hour long show if I stop talking soon. How about that? 2 minutes till an hour. I am going to punch out here because I do want to take the dog out, feed them, and do all that stuff beforehand. So good luck tonight. Somebody go win something. I'm not playing. I might throw one in for just the love of the game, but I'm not playing tonight. So somebody go knock something down. Go win something. Share it with the group. I'll catch you guys later. Good luck tonight.